The steady beep of monitors filled the pediatric emergency room as Dr. Marcus, Chen scrubbed his hands, the familiar ritual grounding him before another long night shift. At 42, he'd saved countless lives, built a medical empire worth billions, and earned accolades from institutions around the world. Yet standing in this sterile hallway, preparing to treat whoever came through those doors next, he felt most like himself. Money had never been the point. Medicine was his calling, and no amount of wealth would ever keep him from working. The floors where it mattered most. The automatic doors burst open with a violent whoosh. A woman stumbled in, her face streaked with tears, clutching a limp toddler against her chest. Marcus's training kicked in instantly as he rushed forward, but his heart stopped cold when he saw her face. Sarah. After 7 years of silence, 7 years of forcing himself not to search for her, not to wonder what might have been, there she was, terrified and desperate, holding a dying child. "Please," she gasped, not yet recognizing him beneath his surgical mask. "My son, he stopped breathing. I don't know what happened. Please save him." Marcus couldn't speak. His hands reached for the boy automatically while his mind reeled. The child was perhaps 3 years old, with dark curls matted against his feverish forehead. Marcus called for his team, his voice steady despite the chaos in his chest, and rushed the boy into a treatment room. Only when he'd placed the small body on the gurney and begun his assessment did Sarah's eyes finally meet his above her son's struggling form. The recognition hit her like a physical blow. "Marcus," she whispered, her legs buckling. A nurse caught her, guided her to a chair, but Marcus couldn't look away from the child. The boy's lips were blue, his breathing shallow and labored. Allergic reaction, Marcus's mind registered. Severe anaphylaxis. He had minutes, maybe less. "Epi now!" He barked, his hands already working. He'd done this 1,000 times, but never had his fingers trembled like this. Never had each second felt like drowning. He administered the epinephrine, watching the child's vitals with an intensity that bordered on prayer. Behind him, Sarah sobbed his name over and over, a broken mantra that nearly shattered his composure. The boy gasped, then coughed. Color began returning to his cheeks in beautiful, miraculous waves. Marcus's team moved around him with practiced efficiency. Oxygen, IV fluids monitoring, but he stood frozen, staring at the child's face as it relaxed from the grip of death. Now that the crisis had passed, he could really see the boy. Those eyes, even closed, had a familiar shape. That chin, that nose, the way his small hand curled even in unconsciousness. "Marcus," Sarah's voice came from right beside him now. "I need to tell you something." He turned to her slowly, this woman he'd loved so completely, so devastatingly. They'd been residents together, brilliant and ambitious, planning a future of medicine and meaning. Then she'd left. No explanation, no goodbye. Just a note saying she couldn't do this anymore. He'd searched for months before forcing himself to stop, to move forward, to build his life around the hole she'd left behind. "His name is Jacob," she said softly, reaching past Marcus to touch her son's forehead. "He's 3.5 years old." Marcus did the math instantly. His breath caught. "Sarah!" "I found out 2 weeks after I left," she continued, her voice breaking. "I was pregnant and I was terrified. Not of being a mother, but of what it would mean. You were so driven, Marcus. You had these enormous dreams, plans to change medicine, to build something that would help millions. I was just as ambitious, just as hungry for my own career. I thought a baby would trap us both, destroy everything we'd worked for. I thought I was setting you free." The words hung between them, heavy with years of silence and sacrifice. Marcus looked back at Jacob, who was breathing easier now. Color fully returned to his cherubic face. His son. This beautiful child was his son, and he'd almost lost him before even knowing he existed. "You had no right," Marcus said quietly. But there was no anger in his voice, only profound sadness. "No right to make that choice for both of us." "I know." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "I've regretted it every single day. Watching him grow, seeing your expressions cross his face. Hearing him laugh with your laugh, it's been torture, Marcus. Beautiful torture. I kept telling myself I'd ruined your life enough already. That you'd moved on. That showing up with a child would only hurt you more. I convinced myself I was protecting you, but I was just a coward." Marcus pulled up a stool, his legs suddenly unable to support him. Around them, the emergency room continued its chaotic symphony, but their small treatment room felt suspended in time. He studied Jacob's sleeping face, looking for himself in those features. The boy stirred slightly, his small hand reaching out instinctively. Without thinking, Marcus took it, and Jacob's fingers wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength. Something broke open in Marcus's chest. Not anger or resentment, but an overwhelming wave of love so fierce it nearly knocked him sideways. This child, this stranger, was his son, his boy, and he'd almost lost him tonight. Almost never known this feeling of complete and humbling connection. "I built everything," Marcus said hoarsely. "The hospitals, the charitable foundations, the free clinics across the country. I did it all because I needed purpose to fill the space you left. I threw myself into helping people. Because I couldn't help myself understand why you disappeared. But Sarah, if you'd told me, if you'd just trusted me—" "I know," she whispered. "I failed you. I failed us. But Marcus, I didn't fail him. I've loved him enough for two parents, given him everything I could. I've told him stories about you, not about us, but about your kindness, your brilliance, your dedication to helping people. I've shown him articles about your work, always wondering if someday I'd find the courage to." She stopped as Jacob's eyes fluttered open. The boy looked confused for a moment, then focused on his mother with obvious relief. "Mama?" "I'm here, baby," Sarah soothed, kissing his forehead. "You're okay now. You're safe." Jacob's gaze drifted to Marcus, taking in the stethoscope, the white coat, the gentle hand still holding his. "Are you the doctor who fixed me?" Marcus couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. He managed a nod, unable to look away from those eyes that were unmistakably his own. "Thank you," Jacob said solemnly, with the grave politeness of a well-raised child. Then he smiled, and Marcus felt his entire world tilt and resettle into a new configuration. That smile held his future, his past, his redemption, and his heartbreak all at once. Over the next hours, as Jacob stabilized and dozed under observation, Marcus and Sarah talked quietly in the hallway. She told him about Jacob's first steps, his first words, his obsession with dinosaurs and building blocks. She showed him photos on her phone, 3.5 years of memories he'd missed, moments that could never be recovered but could perhaps be forgiven. "I don't expect anything," Sarah finally said as dawn began breaking outside the hospital windows. "I'm not asking for money or for you to upend your life. I want you to know him if you want that. He deserves to know his father, and you deserve to know your son." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, seeing both the girl he'd loved and the woman who'd made an impossible choice that had shaped all their lives. He thought about the billions in his accounts, the hospitals bearing his name, the lives he'd saved, and the innovations he'd pioneered. None of it meant anything compared to the sleeping child in the room behind them. "I want everything," he said finally. "Every birthday I've missed, every bedtime story, every scraped knee and bad dream and moment of laughter. I want to know what makes him scared and what makes him brave. I want to teach him things and learn from him. I want to be his father, Sarah, in every way that matters. Not because you owe me, but because he deserves it and because I already love him more than I knew was possible." Sarah's sob was one of relief and release. They stood together in that hallway as the hospital woke around them. Two people who'd lost each other finding their way back through the tiny, perfect bridge of their son. Marcus knew nothing about this would be simple. There would be legal discussions, custody arrangements, difficult conversations, and years of rebuilding trust. But standing there, watching the sunrise paint gold across the walls, he understood something profound. Wealth had given him power, but fatherhood would give him purpose of a kind he'd never imagined. Later that morning, when Jacob woke again, Marcus was sitting beside his bed. The boy studied him curiously, sensing something had changed in the air between the adults around him. "Can I tell you a secret?" Marcus asked softly. Jacob nodded, leaning closer. "I'm going to be spending a lot more time with you and your mom from now on," Marcus said, his heart thundering. "Would that be okay with you?" The boy's face split into that devastating smile again. "Because you're my dad?" Marcus froze, his eyes darting to Sarah, who looked equally shocked. Did your mom tell you?" "No," Jacob said matter-of-factly. "But you have my nose. Mama always said I got it from someone special." He reached up and touched, Marcus's face with his small hand. I always wanted a dad. As Marcus pulled his son into his arms for the first time, feeling those small arms wrap around his neck with complete trust, he understood that some miracles don't announce themselves with thunder and lightning. Sometimes they arrive in emergency rooms at 3 in the morning, gasping for breath and blue around the lips, forcing you to save a life you didn't know was yours to save. Sometimes destiny isn't about the grand plans you make, but about the moments that remake you entirely, about the children who find their way home to your heart. No matter how long the journey takes,